Okay, so my story starts in Colorado. Colorado is in the middle of the United States where there's lots of snow and beautiful mountains. And I grew up in a town called Colorado Springs where pretty much my parents were the Catholic Church of Colorado Springs. Right? The bishop came over to our house for dinner. If there was a, hey, can we need someone to do this? My family was the first one. My dad was the music. We had to wait at him to stop singing and talking and singing after Mass my whole childhood. And so the church was a huge part of my life, but I never learned anything about our faith. We were a family of doers, not a family of believers. So throughout my whole life, the church was an integral part, and I was absolutely Catholic, but I didn't know my faith. And it was a beautiful part because it what brought us all together, my parents and I and my sister. But it was also, as I started to grow up in life, it started to really have this challenge for me of like, how do I fit into this world, right? And so not only were we the Catholic Church of Colorado Springs, I also grew up with a father who was an alcoholic. I had a father who, see, I'm starting to cry, guys. I'm so sorry. When I was growing up, he was the perfect Catholic dad till about 9 o'clock at night. At 9 o'clock at night, there was a side of him that nobody would believe. No one understood and no one talked about. And so I was always inspired by my mom growing up because she loved this man who was not very fun after 9 o'clock at night. And she stuck with him and fought for him, and they're still married today. So I'm growing up in this household, and then I finally get to high school, secondary school, and I meet this guy. And he's pretty amazing. He was a football star. I was the volleyball star. This is like High School Musical. It was what it was. I was the captain, student council. Like, yes, we have pep rallies and cheerleaders. That is real. It's not just in the movies. And so we would do all these things. And so I met this guy, and I just fell in love with him. He was my everything, because all I ever wanted was to be a Catholic wife and family and kids and all the things, right? And here I met this amazing guy, and he was going to be the one. Except he was kind of like my dad. Pretty awesome until about 9 o'clock at night, when he was abusive, controlling. Even now, as I think about my 16-year-old self, he would have said, "You don't look up." Like imagining me on stage talking to you, he would have said, "No one should know your name. You should look down and be unseen. Like I'm the face of this relationship, not you." And I looked to my mom and I saw what she did with my dad, and I assumed that's what you do. You just stay with these men who might not treat you very well. It was all I knew. And so I stayed with him for 4 years. And he wasn't Catholic, and he was like, "I don't want you to do your faith. I don't want you to hang out with your family. I don't want you to hang out with your friends." And even today, I'm like, "Catherine, why? Why did I say yes, yes, yes?" And it's because I was in love. And I would fight any person who wants to tell me that I wasn't in love. Because for what I knew of love at the time, I was 100% madly in love with this man. Boy, he wasn't a man. And then one day, I went to college, and I went to a college specially to be close to him. And one day he called me on the phone and just said, "Catherine, we're done." I found someone else, and he was actually with that person the next week and she was having his baby a week late, like 2-3 months later. And so this dream that I had my whole life, that I was going to get married, I was going to have babies, that was my future, all in one day went away. And now I didn't have any friends. I didn't have my faith. I didn't have anything. And I didn't know what to do. So what do you do when you're on a college campus and you have no idea what to do? You look to the world. And so I looked to the world. And I was like, what do I need to do to be happy? And so I did all the things that you're imagining, right? To be happy. I was in inappropriate relationships. I was drinking. I was spring break, MTV, Mexico. Am I aging myself? It was a big thing in the 90s, right? You'd go to spring break Mexico, and I did that, and I skydived, and I scuba dived, and I traveled, and anything the world was telling me would make me happy, I was doing. And I would come home every day, and I was sad, but I didn't know what to do. So I just stayed on that path until one day I graduated from college, moved back home with my parents, and though my dad still was drinking heavily, he was still a faithful man, and he met these missionaries from Focus, and he said, "Hey, I know these missionaries, and I think you're gonna go to hell." That's what he told me. "And I think you need to go on a friend blind date with these missionaries." And I was like, "Are you paying?" It's like, "Yes." So he paid for me to go to coffee with these Focus missionaries, really, and I imagine that he did sit down and say, "Hey, will you guys help my daughter? I think she's going to hell." And they did. They lovingly took me in, and we started having coffee, and I started going to Bible studies, and I was so amazing at Bible study. I was 100% bought in, and I partied pretty hard on the weekends. And my dad, in his loving way, then decided to kick me out of the house because he said, "Catherine, you need to go, grow up a little bit. So I'm going to kick you out. But guess what? These missionaries need a roommate. You could go live with them." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks, Dad." And so I lived with these 2 female missionaries, and there was 2 male missionaries that lived in another apartment, but they would spend a lot of time at our house, and we would do Bible studies, and I was just seeing these people, and they were happy, like weird happy. Like, who's actually that happy? I mean, I won't forget the first Halloween party we went to, there was laughing and dancing and fun and no alcohol. I was like, what? This exists? And I was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to keep watching. And I had really came to the realization that what I was really struggling for is I really wanted marriage and family and stability, and I was just looking in all the wrong ways. So I decided, what do I need to do to find a good man? I have to get skinny, obviously. So I started going to the gym, and I took out all the carbs, and I was like in the best shape of my life, and I was getting ready, and it was in April, and I got this outfit, and I'll never forget this outfit because if you know me outside of this, actually this is kind of not fancy, but I am like a jumper and jeans person. I don't even like to wear real shoes. If I could wear slippers out in public, that would be my choice. And so I will just never forget this outfit. It had this brown shirt with matching brown boots and jeans, and I was going to this party in Denver, which is an hour from the Springs. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to this party and I'm gonna find love. Why do you feel like you know where my story's going? So I'm gonna find love. So I go to this Bible study. I go to this party in Denver, and of course, Colorado, there's a blizzard. We all get stuck in this apartment with nothing but vodka and no chasers for like 3 days. So I will just let you imagine, and we won't go into any details, but it wasn't a pretty moment. And as I'm driving home in the same clothes I've been wearing for 3 days through this party lifestyle, probably smelling horrible, I remember breaking down, and I just cried. And I was like, God, I am so sad. This is not working. I don't know why, but it's not working. I'm gonna, put a line in the sand. If I do what these crazy missionaries do, and I try this, mass thing and prayer and confession, I'll give you 6 months to see if you make me happy. Sisters, I know this is a bad thing to do. But I did. I was like, I'm putting a line in the sand. Like, I will do this 100%. I'll throw myself into this. I want to find happiness because I just keep finding emptiness, and I was sad. And so I get home, and as soon as I walk in, I haven't even changed clothes yet. I'm still in this brown shirt, brown boots, but they looked good together. And one of the male missionaries came up to me and said, hey, one of the missionaries is having a birthday today, and we're all gonna go out to the movies. Do you wanna come out with us? It's like, nice move, God. I guess I'm saying yes. So I got in the car and went to the movies with them. And we started, and they just lovingly walked with me. I started going to mass every day. They helped me go to confession for the first time since my first confession. And if you've ever done that, it's a very scary confession. And it was beautiful how the priest just received me and loved me. And I think he was more excited that I was there than I was excited to be there. And it was this beautiful moment. And so I'm just slowly, really saying, okay, I want no men in my life right now, just God. I'm doing this for 6 months. And then this male missionary who asked me to the movies is in my space all the time. And I'm trying to be I'm trying to look at Jesus. Why are you bugging me? And wherever I go, he's like, can I go to dinner with you? Can I hang out with you? And I'm like, what's going on here? And so one day, finally, after doing this for a while, we decide to go on this long walk, okay? Colorado, it's not too cold. The sky is perfect. It's nighttime, and there's stars, and we're walking close to each other, and I'm like, ooh, maybe, he is kind of cute. It's maybe there's something. And he looked at me and he said, Catherine, I got to tell you something. I was like, okay, what is it? And he said, well, we've been spending a lot of time together, and we're around each other all the time. And I'm like, yes. I just want you to know I don't like you. I'm in love with another woman. And in a few months, I'm going to tell her my love, and we're going to get married and live happily ever after. And I just want you to be confused by all this time we're spending together. And like a good woman, I said, I don't like you either. Duh. You want to keep walking in the moonlight together? Sure, okay. So this continues on for a couple of months, until finally he's getting ready to go meet this girl, and he says, hey, actually, I don't want to tell her because I think I'm falling in love with you. I was like, duh, I knew that. But come on, ladies, sometimes it takes them a while to get there, right? You just kind of went, okay. So we start dating, we're spending more time together, and if you've ever been married, you know that there's this moment when they start acting really weird where you think engagement's coming. And you're just like, okay. And there was this really important thing for me because I had known this missionary now for 2 years, and there was no interest in me until there was interest in me, right? We had been together, and it was just odd, and I couldn't get married to him without knowing the why. What changed in me that made him interested in me now? And so I asked him, I said, before we go any further, I need to know this answer. And he looked at me and he said, well, there was this day and you came home and you walked in and you had a brown shirt on. And And I knew that from that day forward, I felt called to you. I just wanted to be in your presence. I felt safe with you. And I just didn't say anything. Because do you tell him? Do I tell him that was the day I gave my life to God? Do I tell him that was the day I challenged him and said, fine, make me happy? And he was like, here, I see you. I didn't say anything. I was too afraid. And then I was like, it took a while, and I told him, I said, I just want you to know that that day when I wore that brown shirt was the day that I told God, you take control. Because I'm tired of trying to do it myself and it isn't working. And so we end up married, and you think, isn't that a beautiful end to an amazing story? Right? That should be the end. God doesn't work that way. So we get married, have a few kids. Life is great. My dad is still drinking. And it's weird, I don't know if you have drinkers in your life, but I had always known it was a problem, but you just normalize it until someone loves you and it says, hey, do you realize your dad really isn't okay? And I'm like, oh, it's okay, we just cover him up. We just cover that up, no one needs to know. And he really started to challenge me in this. And so we decided after a couple of really bad nights that it was time to have an intervention. And as Sister told you, I'm a counselor, so obviously I would run the perfect intervention, right? So I am 9 months pregnant with my third child, and I decide to sit down and have an intervention with my dad. And, goes as all interventions go. He said, I'm not an alcoholic. That's a you problem, not a me problem. I said, well, these are my boundaries. If you are drinking, you can't be around me and my children. And so you get to decide what you want to do. And he said, I love you. He's always been a good father, just a drinking father. He said, I'll stop drinking for you. He's like, I don't think I have a problem, but if this is what you need, then that's what I'll do. I said, okay, our boundaries are clear. So I go happy, and he's sober, and things are going well, and I go into labor, and I have a very complicated birth. My son almost dies. He was without oxygen for 4 to 6 minutes, and he wasn't supposed to leave the hospital. And if he did leave the hospital, he would be severe special needs. He would always need constant care. And so I'm reeling from this reality of my son. And it's finally the day that we get to take him home from the neonatology area, the NICU. And my dad calls me up in the way he does. And he just says, hey, Catherine, I'm going to come pick you and the baby up at 5, but I just need you to know I relapsed last night, had 2 bottles of wine, drove drunk, but it's okay. It was just a one-time thing. And I said, Dad, I'm sorry. If you're drinking, you can't come pick us up. And that was the day that I had to take my dad out of my life. And so I'm sitting there with my special needs son, no idea how I'm going to care for it. My mother, as always, staying next to my father. So I lose my mom, my dad, and I bring a special needs home son the same day. And I was like, God, I married a missionary. I should have the easy life, right? So my husband gets the dream job. We take our 3 children, one with special needs, to Pennsylvania. And my husband's dream job has a lot of traveling. So now I'm in a state very far away from where I live. I have a special needs son. I have no contact with my father, my mother, and my kids, and I'm single momming it most of the time. And my husband is like, Catherine, I know you're really sad, and I think you need to go to a women's retreat. And I was like, ugh. I don't want to do that. And he's like, okay, I'm going to make you go because I think you need this. And so I went to this women's retreat, and I sit at this table with these women sharing these beautiful stories. And I want to tell you that I was inspired, but I wasn't. I was so sad with my own struggles that I just couldn't open my heart to anything that anyone was saying. I definitely sat there with a big wall around me at the table. Probably people thought I was mean, but I was just sad, right? I just couldn't talk because I was so confused. Why, if I had chosen God and he had given me all these blessings, why these struggles now, right? So I'm sitting there at adoration. So finally it goes into adoration, and I decide, you know what? I'm just going to lay it out to God. I'm going to tell him how mad I am. How mad I am about my husband, my father, the disability, the Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's not the best place to live. And I just let it all, like, not in this beautiful, like, oh. It was much more like, argh. And I was mad, and I was angry, and I was crying, like snot everywhere, embarrassing, right? Like, and I just had this moment, and then all of a sudden, and I'm telling you, I'm like 100% truth, I felt Jesus wrap his arm around me. I can still feel his fingers on my shoulder. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. And that changed everything. Did it literally change anything? No. My son was still special needs. My dad was still working on his sobriety. I was still in Pennsylvania. Like, nothing changed that day except I changed. And now, even on my hardest days, I can still feel those fingers. Like, I have no doubt that Jesus just put his arm around me and said, I know. Right? It was the day I realized, like a parent, when you have to tell your kid, no, you can't ride the bike down the stairs. And they're like crying, like, why? This would be so fun. And you're like, I'm not mad that you're mad. Because he knows what we need. It was the day I realized that he knows when we're struggling. I didn't have to come to him happy about it. He knew what he was giving me was hard. And he knew that I needed that for what he was about to give me. And so he wrapped his arm around me, and I felt that closeness. And that's a feeling I've never let go. So let's go about a couple more years, right? Wouldn't that be a beautiful end of the story? Oh, God keeps going, right? So now I have a great husband, married the guy. He's handsome around here, bearded dude. He's good looking. He's mine. And, I have 4 kids now. My son is a true miracle. He's actually very athletic and actually very capable. Thank you, anyone who does early interventions with children and teaches them how to walk and talk and all those. Thank you, Lord, for them, because my son truly is a miracle. And so I thought, that was the only miracle you get. You get one, but you actually get more. And so we're going on, and then this weird thing starts happening in the world. When was that? Was it 2020? Yeah, does anyone know what was happening in 2020? Yeah, so my husband is a power lifter, college football player, big guy, and all of a sudden, he's not feeling too good. This was November of 2020. And he's like, I think I got it. And I was like, okay. And he's like, but I'm a young, strong man. What's it gonna do to me? Well, he got it really, really bad. And so my husband struggled with COVID, and he was actually in the hospital on a ventilator for 28 days. And I'm gonna cry. If you remember 2020, that was back when everything was quarantined. So my husband was in a hospital where I couldn't see him. The only thing I could do was watch his face on FaceTime, watch him breathe, because that's all he could do. He had a window, because we live in a small town, so he could actually go and just watch him breathe from his hospital window. But I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't see my friends, couldn't see my family, because everyone was in isolation. Again, alone. And I remember from the first day I married my husband, I would pray to God every day, please don't take my husband, because I am not strong enough to do this without him. And here I was living my biggest nightmare. Every day the doctor would call and say, I have no idea why he's still alive. Like, today might be the day. Today might be the day for 28 days. And so I had these moments where I had to decide, like, okay, God, I had asked and said, like, I can't do this without him. And he just so beautiful in prayer said, I know you can't do it without him. You have me. And it was the best moment in my marriage ever, because it was the moment I learned I actually didn't need my husband. That actually wasn't a joke, but I like it. It was the moment I realized I wanted my husband. And I also realized that God was giving me everything that I needed. Even with quarantine, people would leave meals out of my door. I would have someone just called the utilities and paid my utilities bill. And one of the reasons that we call my business Sacred Heart Mental Wellness is actually because of Ireland. And this is one of those things where I'm going to geek out because I love you guys all so much you have no idea. You might have remembered in 2020 this bearded, rough-looking dude who was all over Facebook asking for prayers. he went pretty viral in an ICU video, talking about what I say was what Lazarus would say when he came out of the tomb, because he was nonverbal on a ventilator for so long, and then the moment he woke up, he comes on Facebook and lives a video. I hadn't heard the man's voice in months, and I'm getting all these calls. Did you see Dave? Did you see Dave? He's on the video. And I was like, Dave did a video? He can talk? I don't know. But I truly believe that Ireland as an island was praying for my husband, and so I'm sure that there are people here who said prayers for him when he was sick. And by the grace of God and a true miracle, he came home. And and so the reason I say Ireland is because when we came here to visit before, we saw how you had Sacred Heart pictures in all of your church, in your houses with the little red light. And Father Patrick down in Waterford would always pray after communion. He would say, "O most Sacred Heart of Jesus, I place all my trust in thee." And every time Dave would be in the hospital and his oxygen levels would drop, all the machines would go beep, 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 beep. And he could do nothing except pray that prayer until the machine stopped beeping. And so that is why we named Sacred Heart Mental Wellness, because it saved him. And it was a prayer that I was praying at home, not even knowing he was praying it, because we were so connected to Ireland. And it was this connection that we had where we felt so loved and prayed for here. And so I do attribute all of Ireland to my husband coming home and your prayers. So thank you. And so wouldn't that be awesome if that was the end of the great story? I'm trying to see if Angela's like giving me the time thing. So my husband comes home, and it truly is a miracle. If anyone wants to cry, I'll show you this video of him. We surprised the kids in front of the Eucharist, like he was praying and they were coming to adoration. They didn't know he was out of the hospital, and we surprised them with Daddy praying. And so he comes home, and we think, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, he's going to be back to normal. He was never back to normal. He has permanent lung damage from being on the ventilator. He will never be back to normal. He hasn't really worked since. He's a 43-year-old man who has to be pushed by a wheelchair when we go to the airport. He has to ask for the golf cart because he couldn't go golfing today, and he could do 3 holes before he got sick and tired. And so I saw this man come who was my hero, who could do anything, not be able to do anything. And I had to learn how to serve him. I say so often when we think about our marriage vows, for better or worse, for sickness and in health, we think better, worse, health, sickness. Right? We don't think about that. And we definitely don't think about when the man would have to be the one cared for. I know when I said that, I was like, yeah, you can take care of me when I'm sick, sure. And just the beauty and the grace that has come from learning how to serve him through his illness, and how he's been able to find peace in what he is able to do. I kind of call him my roadie. That's why he comes wherever I go and helps me put out my books and stuff like that. And so we've really learned, and our children have learned the beauty, and like, we can't have this beautiful picture of what God, like, we want to say, God, this is what I think my life should look like. And it's so short-sighted when we do that. When we actually sit and let God give us the rest of the story and we let it unfold, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I'm hoping for some fish and chips. Haven't had any really yet. But I digress. I don't know. I don't know what God is doing with my business, with my talks. I don't know what he's doing with his health and with my children. But what his story has showed me is that I have never been alone. Right? I think Lisa said it so great yesterday when she was saying, why are we trying to do anything? Why don't we just be? Why don't we let him lead? Why don't we sit and just allow him to show us this beautiful path, right? And so if you take anything from my story, I do want to give truth to the fact that there are lots of waves in our lives. I wish that life was smooth sailing and there wasn't going to be any hardship, or what I had hoped when I was younger, that if I did one, it was like, check, now it's going to be easy. But if we can all just take a moment and say, thank you, Lord, for never leaving me alone. If we can sit in those moments of prayer and just realize that he is with us and he loves us and he is making a way. And I can see how every challenge that I had, every step along the way, he was doing two things. He was strengthening me for the next challenge and strengthening my relationship and trust for him in the next challenge. And so when we can sit in those moments and realize the beauty of that, I think we are unstoppable. And to kind of end my talk today, I want to share an important story about, again, the power of the Irish prayer. And I know that I am making all of you uncomfortable because Irish people don't take compliments. I'm American, I get to upset you, that's what we do, it's okay. I tried for the first couple of years to not be American and try to be Irish, and now I'm like, no, it is what it is. So I'm gonna give you, I just think this is a very powerful story about the Irish prayer. So in 2019, I came and lived in Ireland for the summer with my kids, and we did a number of retreats. Holy Family Mission, Knockadune, all around Ireland. And one of them was at a youth retreat in Knockadune in the summer. And I was in charge of talking to the ladies and gave them my testimony, and my husband talked to the guys. The ladies gave me a standing ovation, just so you know. And up until that day, so my dad relapsed on February 5th. 2011. And he had been sober up until that point. That really was the day that he decided he had a problem and started going to AA and took his sobriety serious and has decided, and was sober. Well, when I was at that Knockadune retreat, I had been talking to my dad, and I had just felt that he wasn't okay. I could just feel it in my bones that something wasn't right. It's a counselor thing. We don't read minds. We just read body language. But I could just tell I was really worried, and in all humility, I went to those girls and I said, can you please say a prayer for my dad? Something's not right. And I was really worried he was relapsing. I could just feel the white knuckling a little bit, and I knew he wasn't talking, and I was just seeing some patterns I was worried about. And I said, please, if you believe in prayer at all, please take a minute and pray for my dad. And I really felt like the girls did that. And they kind of were like, okay, I'll try. But if any of you were there or your daughters were there, I want you to know that the next morning I called my dad, and he said, just letting you know, I've been really struggling, but I've got a new resolve today, and I'm going back to AA. And it always makes me cry because I believe those little girls, they were 12, 13, 14 at the time, have no idea that they saved my dad years of sobriety by taking a moment to say their prayers, just pray for him. So I just don't know if you guys realize how powerful your prayers are. And so this is a great opportunity to have the time and the space to be praying those prayers and just know the power of them and the life that they're impacting. And again, we may never know. Those girls do not know the grandfather my children can now have because they helped him stay sober. So thank you if any of you knew those girls. And in case anyone's interested, I do have my book, The Catholic Guide to Anxiety. It's a very different book. I try to be very proactive in the book, very positive and encouraging. I believe anxiety is the lie that the evil one is using to keep us stuck. He tells us you're not good enough, you're not tall enough, short enough, blonde enough, old enough, young enough, whatever you are, it's not enough. And it traps us in this anxiety. But what if we flipped that narrative and saw that we are enough and that God created us good and that our anxious feelings are very natural and normal, and then I could understand them and then I could treat them. So if you're looking for a book to better understand your own anxiety, or you have that person in your life who you love a lot, and every time you try to help them, they're like, oh, Mom, you're making it worse. I also wrote the book for you. so you can have a better idea of what to say and understand more what they're going through. And then there's also a little paperwork. My husband and I are going to be doing a marriage retreat in Clonmel next weekend. So if you're interested, there's a little information you can email through that. So just know that that's another option. It'll be Sunday afternoon on the 24th of November. And I will be back there. And I don't have a ton of books left. I'm about to sell out, so they are on Amazon. They're a little cheaper today, but you can get it on Amazon if you aren't able to get it today. Okay, so thank you so much.